Hello, it's Dr. B again with Chapter 7 of the I Want to Be Me course. I want to remind you my formal name is Dr. Madeline Boskowitz, and I'm the author of these two books, the guidebook, I Want to Be Me, but I Don't Know Who I Am, guidebook for teens and young adults, and the other book, the workbook, the I Want to Be Me workbook, which includes pre-teens to help them get ready for adolescence. Oops, I just lost my page there. Okay, I'll find it in a minute. So you're probably thinking, gee, she's wearing a lot of makeup today. And the truth is that, yes, I am a little more than usual. I'm going to be taping a live interview with someone in just a few hours. So I'm preparing my formal look since I will be appearing in front of a few hundred people, even though I won't see any of them. And probably I should do the same for you guys. I don't know how many people are following this. I'm hoping that it's valuable, whoever is following, that it is valuable for you. So chapter 7 is a complicated chapter. It's actually a pretty long chapter for one of the end chapters. It's called Enlist the Needed Help. You are not alone. So up to now, I've been talking about independence and responsibility for yourself, but it doesn't mean that you're alone. Not at all. You may be alone in some ways doing this work, but none of us are alone. And as a matter of fact, everything we learn in this world is from other people, maybe even if it's from this book. I'm still a person. You're learning from me. So everything we know, we've learned from others. And hopefully we pass on that knowledge, whether it's to our children, our siblings, our students, if you're a teacher or a professor at the university level, my readers. We want to pass on as much as we can because we've learned as much as we can. So this is so important. And I want to come back to this, learning as much as you can. The more you know about this world and how it works, the better off you are, the more choices you have in life. So in this chapter, I go into a great deal of depth to persuade you to take care of yourself, to make sure that you learn as much as you can. And since you're probably in school at the age that you're reading this, it's important to learn in school, even though other people hate school. That's okay. The learning is hard. Nobody said it's easy. But there are people there to help you whether you just don't understand in class, and how important it is for you to learn to raise your hand, ask questions, go to after-school tutorials or before-school tutorials, whatever they have. Go look it up online. Most school districts post their lessons online so you can repeat them. It is absolutely important to have the courage to do this for yourself. It will open so many doors. And if you don't, unfortunately, it closes a lot of doors, as you all know. You know, people with a college education do better financially, usually, not always. Sometimes people choose to learn on their own, and that's one way of learning. A lot of people have learned their trade on their own or without going to college, which is very valuable. And they've learned the trade, they've learned to get really good at it, maybe even teach it. Because that's the next step, really, if that's what you want. And, people become very good at farming and, but there is always education, whether it's what we call formal education in a school or university program, or informal education that you learn on your own. But so it is so important, and part of the workbook asks, what is it that you need to do in school? Let me get back to that page. Do you need special help? A lot of students have issues with reading, with math, with, sometimes they have ADHD or learning disabilities or dyslexia, and this makes it more challenging, but certainly not impossible. It's not a good excuse to say, I never did this because I have ADHD or dyslexia. The idea is to work your way around it. And as a matter of fact, in the chapter, I point out to people who, accommodate, who get used to their limitations, and we all have limitations, myself included. I have a bunch. They worked around their limitations. I use the example of a friend who is blind. And he was in college with me, and I was just going to read what I wrote. So years ago, I had a blind friend who was in college with me. He had found ways to manage very well. He often got other students to read him from his textbooks in exchange for tutoring them in the course. He was great at concentrating. He knew he had to get it the first time he heard it, as he would likely not get a second reading. So he was a great student who could help others, even though he was the handicapped one. Okay, and I put handicapped in quotation marks because he really functioned, what we call functioning. He did very well despite his limitation, and I've always admired him. He's not a young man anymore, and I'm certainly not young anymore either. So I want to add that once you accept your limitations, they become part of who you are and not a handicap. They kind of disappear as you compensate, find other ways to get to your goals. I want to talk about another friend from long ago, and she had lost a leg in an accident when she was very little and had grown up with an artificial leg since then and had had many, many surgeries to adjust to her situation. She never talked about it and probably didn't think much about it either. No one knew about it unless she told them. She always wore long skirts. She has had 4 children that she has raised with her husband of many, many years. She has a great career as a writer and a teacher. Of course, she doesn't ski or participate in sports, but she has a good life with what she can do. She learned to incorporate, to make do with her handicap, again in quotes, very early in life, and has learned to live with what she can do. So what these people have in common is the will to accept themselves the way they are and to make the best of things. So if you have a hard time in math or in reading, let's accept that. That's what it is, and it's not easy for any of us. And, do we then take the time to learn it anyway, to take care of ourselves? And in the workbook, and I, ask you about, it's mostly a questionnaire. What will you do? What do you do? What are your limitations? How can you work around them? What do you do to make up for it? And then I go on to homework, because this work was inspired by students who were in shelters, as I may have shared with you, and then was again used for workshops in inner city high schools. So these were students who had a hard time overall. They were tended to be poor, to have homes that were not as easy to live in as kids who are better off, though some of those homes are very difficult to live in. Nobody is spared. So, but they were, a lot of times I heard they didn't have any place where to do their homework. They slept in the living room. They never had privacy. So life was very, very challenging. So, it's important to look at what is your situation and what can you do? Can you go to after school programs? Can you find out about those? As you get to high school, this is really your responsibility. Though, of course, your parents can help, but a lot of these students have parents who were not available to help for whatever reason, sometimes simply because, like mine, they didn't know anything about what's available or not. I think I shared that in the book with you. We were immigrants, as you can hear from my accent still, and we had no idea. So, it was the school's job to refer us to various resources. And it also is your job, if they're not giving you exactly what you need, to try and get it. It's your job. I think the example I use in the book, when you're hungry, and there is food there, sort of in a buffet, you go and get it. You don't wait till somebody decides to ask you if you want to eat. So it's the same thing with school and with teaching. Teachers, what I mean is teachers are there to teach. It's their job and it's your right to have an education. As a matter of fact, it is so much your right that the public education is free so that you can benefit from it. That means everyone is entitled to an education. Remember that. Everyone is entitled to an education. And if you've already left education, it's never too late to go back. As I say many times in this book, you can get a GED, you can move on to junior college, community college, you can do all kinds of things. So I ask you to examine this in the workbook. And then I also talk about when there are severe problems at home and that you are entitled to good treatment, and that sometimes if they are so severe, you need to get outside help by going to a teacher, counselor, school psychologist, or anybody that you trust in the community, or even the police itself, to get help and protection. This is, of course, very difficult to do, but it is also very helpful if you can have the courage to do it. It takes courage. I think that's one of the big things that I help you cultivate in this book. And then I move on in the workbook, I move on to young adults. And by young adults here, I'm focusing on the older teens who don't live at home, who may live on a college campus, or maybe out in the workforce, or maybe living by themselves or with roommates. And generally, they don't live at home and they need to find the resources. So if they're in college, it's very easy to do. There's counseling center. They can always get help. There are career counseling or psychological counseling or whatever you need. That the colleges do furnish that. It's part of what you're entitled to. Don't feel that you're taking advantage of it or them. It is for your advantage. If you are working, there are, HR department, human resources department, where you can get help and information about what you're entitled to. There is generally the state, which provides protections and information to workers. You can join a union. If there isn't one, you can help form one. That's something very valuable. If you need help with mental health or with disabilities, or even with employment or getting into college, there are resources everywhere, and it is your responsibility to find out. You can find out from peers, you can find out from the library or from your high school or from any college campus. You just show up and, ask to make an appointment. And of course, you can look up a ton of these things online. And if you don't have access to a computer, you go again to a public library, which is free. And I believe they're open now despite COVID, though that's been kind of touch and go. But information is available. But again, it's your job to look for it and to find it and to request it. To request the help. If you go to the library and you don't know how to look for it, hey, that's what librarians are for. That's their job. And they like to work. They like to do something. They don't want to sit bored behind a desk. So don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so that's the best I can offer you. And I finished the workbook chapter by talking about young people who have had trouble with the law. Now this one is much harder, but there are programs for rehabilitation, and there are counseling centers, and there are even scholarships to help people get back into society once they've paid their debt. And I once worked with youth who had been adjudicated and were on probation and had to undergo group therapy for a certain amount of time. And some of them learned that this was their way forward, and they were able to take advantage of it to face up to what they had done and then make some resolutions to move on. Unfortunately, some of them were not. They just sat there the time that they had to do their time, and it was really sad that they couldn't see that this was their ticket to move forward to a more successful life. But we adults do what we can. I think in the chapter I mentioned that the saying is you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that means that we offer what we can to help others, but it's up to the others to learn and to take advantage of what's offered. So we are moving at a good speed through these chapters, and I look forward to doing chapter 8 with you very soon. Take care of yourself, get the help that you need, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.